and thank you all for coming. And tonight's meeting is going to be a short, about 45-minute presentation at the beginning, and then we're going to take public comment at the end. There's a sign-in sheet at the back table if you saw it on your way in to sign up for public comment. If you decide during the course of the meeting that you want to share a comment, Justin, who's at the back, will have the sign-up sheet, and you can either kind of catch his eye and he'll bring it to you, or feel free to just get up and go back and add your name to the list. Before we start, I want to let you know that Vashon High School's Riptide broadcast group is filming the meeting. They're broadcasting it on their Facebook page and YouTube, and they've let me know that the link will be available after the meeting, and we'll also post that on the Washington State Ferries page for those of you that want to share it for people that couldn't be here tonight and want to follow along from home or watch it later. So I'm going to briefly run through the agenda for tonight. We're going to do a welcome, an update on our public process that's been going on for the last year, and then a short overview of some of the route characteristics and some future planning efforts, and then we're going to delve right into public comments. Up here we have some ground rules. I know they're hard to see, but I just want to remind everyone of that from the beginning because we have a really large crowd and I know a lot of folks want to talk tonight. Please be respectful. Allow one person to speak at a time, no interrupting. Keep your comments brief so that everyone has time to speak. And please silence your cell phone. Also, the restrooms are in the back corner there for those of you that need it. I'll repeat this when we get to the public comment period, but just so you can be thinking, for verbal comments, individuals will be called to comment in the order that you signed up in the sign-up sheet at the back. Your comments will be limited to 2 minutes. When I last saw the list, we already had about 20 folks signed up, and I think there's more. We have about a 50-minute public comment period, so I'm really going to keep you moving just for the sake of your neighbors, so everybody has a chance to talk. Clearly state your name at the beginning of the comment. And during the comments, if you'd like to show support for one of the speakers or one of the ideas being raised, please do so silently by just waving your hands in the air. That'll help us keep us moving rather than breaking to clap, and then we won't be able to hear the commenter. Also, all our comments are being recorded. Nicola here is taking notes of the meeting, and as you heard, they're also recording it on video. So we will be capturing these thoughts. We're going to be sharing them with the rest of Ferry executives who aren't here tonight, and also with the rest of our Triangle Citizen Task Force, so they can really hear everything we captured. We're going to be combining the verbal comments with all the written comments that we receive by email or in writing tonight. Everything will go in one place together. No form of comment is weighted any more than the other, so everybody will get to hear everything that people have to say, whether they choose to speak publicly or choose to give our comments in writing. So with that, before we move on, I just want to give a brief introduction to some of the staff we have here tonight. We have Assistant Secretary Amy Scarton, Director of Community Services and Planning, Stephanie Sirkovich, Director of Operations, Greg Faust. At the back there, Justin Fujioka from our communications team is doing sign-in, and again, he'll have the public comment sign up. And then Nicola Zanke here is taking notes and helping kind of coordinate the meeting. Feel free to catch her after the meeting if you have any follow-up questions. And then also John Vizina, who's our Director of Government Relations, and he wanted to make a few other introductions before we move on.
Thanks, Hadley. Good evening. For those of you I haven't talked to, I have had an opportunity, because my contact information is out there, to talk to several people either by email or on the phone, and I really appreciate those conversations. I think it's really helped me and the rest of us, as I share with my colleagues, learn about the frustrations that you're experiencing. Another way I learned about that is from your 3 elected officials, Senator Nelson, Representatives Cody and Fitzgibbon. I think starting last May when we had a new loading procedure at Fauntleroy, which people were justifiably upset about, Senator Nelson, my phone number became speed dialed on her phone. So I hear from her a lot about the frustrations you are feeling, as well as Representatives Cody and Fitzgibbon have contacted me and gone over things they're hearing. The other part of my job, besides elected officials, is dealing with the Ferry Advisory Committees, and Greg Beardsley and Jan Stevens from the Vashon Ferry Advisory Committee are here tonight, and we appreciate them being here as well. Oh, sorry, Kari, I didn't see you there. We looked for you. And Kari is also here. So the 3 Vashon FAC representatives who do a great job telling us about representing passengers and telling us the experience you're having and giving us suggestions.
Could you put the microphone closer to your mouth?
Yep, sorry about that.
Thank you.
So we appreciate the elected officials and the FACs that keep us apprised of what's going on here. And with that, I will turn it over to Amy.
Actually, before Amy talks, I forgot two very important people in the front row. Trevor Sharp, who's our Central Sound Operations Manager, and Wayne McFarland, who works on the Vashon dock, and now he's down at Point Defiance, so he's worked on both ends of the island. He's a traffic attendant at the terminal. Amy.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Amy. I am the Assistant Secretary for Washington State Ferries. I've held that position since February of this year. I was an Assistant Secretary with the State Department of Transportation for the last 4 years, but I was working in other areas of transportation, and so I am relatively new to ferries. And I have a brief introduction today, and I just want to discuss 3 quick points with you. In general, the system that we run here in Washington State, it's very large. It's the largest ferry system in North America. It is very safe, and it's generally efficient. I am looking at the numbers constantly at all of the routes. Ridership is growing. I know you guys feel that. You see it on the boats. You see it at the docks. Our 2016 ridership, it's the highest it's been since 2004. And I pulled the 2017 numbers to date. They're even higher. So ridership is growing on a very large, generally safe and efficient system. But the second point, we've had a tough summer. We admit that. I own that. From the South Sound to the north, we have had issues with some of our vessels. We've had some maintenance issues. We've had some crab pots. I should have brought the crab pot line with me that we've been pulling out of our propeller shafts. We've had boats go out of service for as little as 12 hours. We've had boats go out of service for as much as 2 months. We are working hard every day to get those boats back in service as quickly as we can. But when we cannot fix the issue immediately, we follow a plan. We have a summer service contingency plan. It is not a new plan, but it is the plan that guides our leadership in responding to the crises or responding to even the basic maintenance needs of the fleet in a way that is consistent and that attempts to look across the entire system as we balance the costs, the needs of the passengers, the needs of the communities, and we've attempted to do that this summer in a way that, although it's not been great, we're trying to keep as many boats running as safely as we can. So, generally a good system. We have had a tough summer. The third point is these dialogues are extremely important. They're important to me. They're important to our leadership. I mentioned some of the previous work that I had done with the state DOT, and prior to that, I had always worked in the transportation field, and coming out and talking with the communities, we are not going to know the best thing for your community. We're going to not know, we don't know that in Olympia, we don't know that in Seattle. That's why coming out here and engaging is key, and I thank you for coming. I thank you for your participation and your attendance, and what we're really here to follow up on is last year, my predecessor, the previous assistant secretary, came out and held a public meeting when things the previous summer hadn't gone well either. And she said, we're not going to solve this issue alone at Ferries. We're going to solve it with the community. And she asked for your ideas and she asked for your help. And from what I know about that meeting, folks were divided up into tables and they provided their input. And their input we've taken seriously. And the input we heard, probably louder than everything else, was engage the community more often. So we worked with you folks to form the Triangle Task Force so that this year, as we approach this summer, decisions and ideas and conversations can be had with more community members at the table. Every community that is ferry served has a ferry advisory committee. John mentioned our FACs, and I'm getting out there and I'm meeting with as many of them as they can. I haven't yet been to every FAC meeting, but I prioritized meeting all 3 of the FAC communities on this route, and I accomplished that within my first few months because I knew it was important. I knew we had some issues to solve here. And, you know, I'm not a ferry commuter to this island on a daily basis. I have family that live out here. I get out here when I can, but I am here really today to listen. I'm here to hear from you, and importantly, we're here to present to you what the task force had come up with for this summer, how our operations folks implemented that, and what the data is showing us about the past set of operations. And then we just want to turn it over to you and hear what you folks have to say. So again, thank you for coming. I think as long as we keep this dialogue, we can come up with some stuff to make this route even better. Greg.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, I'm Greg Faust. I'm the Director of Operations for Washington State Ferries. Been in this role for about 2 years. I'm a 31-year employee for Washington State Ferries. My first master's job was actually on this route. My first mate job was actually on this route. My first AB job was actually on this route. So I've worked this route in all different capacities, and now I'm trying to manage it in a different way. So we're going to go through some things. I don't know how many of you are new to the island, but we're going to go through a little brief kind of how the system works, and then we're going to get into some of the work that the task force has done, and then we're going to show you the data that they've asked me for, and some data that the community has asked me for, and we'll present it all before 7:45. So it's basic, right? We've got 3 destinations, we've got 3 vessels, and part of that includes dwell time and crossing time. It's how the boats get across and how long they have to be in the dock. So, vessel crossings. With the 3 destinations, we have 4 slips, which means we can put 2 boats in Vashon at a time, but that's the only destination we have that option. Our crossing times. I will air quotes around the crossing times there. Those crossing times are an Issaquah class ferry at full speed. That's usually what we try to make. They're usually anywhere from Vashon to Fauntleroy, can run anywhere from 15 to 18 minutes, depends. But that is an Issaquah class ferry at full speed. So that is you getting in your car, mashing your gas pedal to the floor for 15 minutes and then stopping at your destination. Okay, that's what we do to our boats on most of our routes system-wide. So I just want to preface that's what those crossing times actually mean. How it all fits? Well, this is a mocked-up schedule. So we look at this, we call it the herringbone. So our vessels go from Fauntleroy to Vashon to Southworth, and then this one comes straight back here to Fauntleroy and does the same thing and kind of repeats. Mixed in with that, we got to put another boat in there. When we add another boat in there, we have to make sure that we're not at any of these locations or these locations at the same time, because there's only one slip. Here at Vashon, we can actually put 2 boats in the slip at a time and it's fine. But most of these connection points here, where one boat's trying to get out while the other one's trying to get in, are very, very narrow. Okay, that's just kind of part of how our system works and how the vessels interact. And we've decided here that we are actually added a 3rd boat to it to make it even more complex. But that's what it is. So about a year ago, we had the public meetings that Amy was talking about. I was tasked with helping lead the task force. And so we went out to the public, went out to you guys and said, hey, does anybody want to volunteer for this? We need some people from the community. What we're looking for is FAC member. We're looking for somebody from the community, and then we would allow the person that we chose from the community and the FAC member to pick the 3rd person from that community. And that's how we did it for Vashon, Fauntleroy, and Southworth. After those public meetings, we started the Triangle Task Force in January. So I'd like to take a moment. I know only 4 of them are here today, because some of them, on vacation or out doing other things. So I'd like them to introduce themselves and then tell us why they decided to volunteer.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Stefanik. I live in the Fauntleroy neighborhood. When I heard about the task force and that they were looking for members, I was very interested for a few reasons.
Could you stand
One-
up?
Could you stand up, please?
Sorry. One is that my family's a little unusual. We use the ferry quite a bit. My kids go to school. They're actually students at this school, and we've been commuters for 7 years now. The second reason is my husband and I own some property over on the peninsula, and we travel over to Southworth quite often to go work on the house that we're building over there. So we are heavy users of the ferry system, and we use all points of the triangle. So I wanted to get involved and see what we could do to make it better. So that's why I joined. Marty?
So, Gary and Kathleen picked me as the third member. I am a Fauntleroy resident. I live 4 houses from the ferry. All of you block my driveways. I have 2 sons that went to Vashon schools. I have many friends on Vashon Island, and I like to bicycle here. So, for a number of reasons, I thought this would be an interesting thing to do.
And I'm Richard Wheeler. I'm one of the members for the Southworth community. I signed up to join the task force because, I commute every day on the ferry to work and back. And my daughter lives in Seattle, so constantly going back on the weekends, going to visit her. I knew something was broken. I wanted to be part of that, find a solution to fix it. I came in with some preconceived ideas. I got some ideas to throw on the table, but once I learned how everything worked, it's a lot more complex on the inside than it is on the outside. That's why I'm here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Merkel. I'm your Vashon representative on this task force. The reason I joined up is I was relatively new to the island when this process started going. I've been here now for just about 2 years. Partly, I wanted to learn what this route was about, what the system was about. The other aspect is after sitting in the lines last summer, I wanted to not just have an opinion on it, but I wanted to have action. I guess having a seat at the table to try to help it going forward. It's part of that service before self thing that I try to live by, and that is why ultimately I'm standing here tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. I do also want to mention that Cara Ulatowski, the FAC member for Vashon, has joined the group. So she will actually get with Stephen at some point in the very near future, and they will pick the third member for the Vashon community. I want to thank them publicly for all the work that they've done. We started out here in January with these task force meetings, and we were doing 2 a month. So every 2 weeks we were meeting over at the church in Fauntleroy after everybody got off work. And we'd sit down for a couple of hours and start pounding this stuff out. So we did it for 2 meetings a month for about 3 months, I think it was, maybe 4 months. And then we've kind of moved it off into monthly meetings once they came up with an improvement plan. So we kind of got our first improvement plan. We decided we would pilot it in May to see how it worked. We tried it out for 4 days. It looked like something was happening there that was positive. So we wanted to try it for a longer period of time because 4 days was really a tough amount of time to make an ultimate decision on. We ran it for 30 days. We looked at the numbers. We didn't make it worse. We made it a little bit better. So we've charged on with it. Now these guys are tasked with starting to look at new things. Continue along, full circle, with back to public meetings, where we started this all off a year ago with Secretary Griffith when we were working on this stuff before. So, what did we learn? Well, these guys learned that we started the pilot thing and then we had to do direct observation. So not only did we put a plan in place that I'm going to describe to you here in a minute, because it's a lot more complex than you probably see when you're coming through the toll booth. We went to direct observation. What do we see? We took videos, all this kind of stuff, and we looked at what was happening. Where were the bottlenecks? Where were the problems? Especially during peak times on a Friday afternoon, right? So we wanted to see all that stuff with direct observation. Now what we're doing is we're going back and we're doing the same thing. We're doing direct observation, right? I live nowhere near Southworth or Fauntleroy, but I take 2 Fridays a month and come down here at different times to wait in line and ride your ferry. So I want to see what that wait is like. I want to experience what you guys are experiencing so I have a better understanding of what you guys are going through when you're waiting to get on a ferry on a Friday night after a long work week and you just want to go home. So I come and experience that. That's part of how I do my direct observation. Other times I'll just come down here and just watch. I sit up on the sewage treatment plant and just watch. Trevor does the same thing. Wayne comes down and does the same thing. We just watch. We want to make sure that it's running the way that we thought it should run, the way the task force put it together. We want to make sure that it's being managed properly. So some of the features and things that we had to deal with. We had 2 people back here scanning tickets with our handheld scanners. 2 people standing back there doing essentially the same job. Toll booth's getting clogged up. This one for Southworth, that one for Vashon. Once this one's full of Southworth back to here, having a hard time pulling the Vashon vehicles around. So with all of the things that we had to look at, we decided, how can we move people around? Do we have the staff to do it? We actually decided we would take a morning person that's normally working the dock, and we shifted them later into the afternoon so that we had the people we wanted. This thing right now takes 3 people to run. We have one person that still has a scanner up there. They're scanning our bypass lane, which is for van pools and car pools. They also deal with our medical preference, folks that come through with medical pref, and things of that like. We have a traffic director. So we got one person back there looking for those little signs on your dashboard to see whether you're going to Vashon or Southworth, to see what lane you need to be in. So instead of having 2 people doing the same job, because it's kind of what we had before, 2 people directing people, tried to move it to one person that's actually in charge of the dock and all of the dock. We put a splitter. It's actually kind of more out here. But we put a splitter out here that's looking for destination. Where are you going? They're looking up the street to see what's happening up the street. They're in communication with the police officer that's trying to run up the street as far as he can to pull vehicles out. So they're in communications all the time. The traffic director, he knows what's happening behind him. He's making the decisions of where cars are going in those 4 lanes, the 4 limited lanes that we have here. He's making those decisions. He's also making the decisions of what the VMS sign should read on each toll booth. Whether they're open to all traffic, whether one's open to Vashon, one's open to Southworth, whatever. He's making those decisions. The splitter's job is to look back at those signs and make sure that the people in the toll booth have switched them correctly. So there's a lot of communication going on there between the police officer, the splitter, and the traffic director. And eventually the traffic director is talking to the person on the boat that's doing the loading so that they understand what's coming their way. So there's a lot of communication. The dynamic signs we're trying to utilize to their fullest extent. We got a little overzealous with them one particular day and realized that more minimal usage of it is better. So oftentimes you guys see that they're both open to all traffic. Occasionally you'll see them split, one for Vashon and one for Southworth. It really just depends on what's happening each individual load. Because every load here is different. Depends on what boat's in the dock. It depends on what time people show up at Fauntleroy to get on a boat. It's always changing. And then sales redemption, right? We wanted sales redemption at the toll booth where it is at every other facility. Every other single facility that we operate out of does sales at a toll booth. We had people sitting in a toll booth and 2 people scanning. We had 4 people to do 2 people's job. So we decided to find a way to have those other 2 people do something different besides what the person that's paid to do that in the toll booth. So those are the things we did. We got our police officer locked in Monday through Friday. We have him there occasionally on weekends. We pay that extra money to have him there occasionally on weekends when it's a particularly busy weekend or it's a holiday. We've got a good contract with Seattle PD right now to keep that person there at least through this biennium. And we're likely going to try to keep that for the next biennium. It'll just be something that we're going to try to keep doing going forward. We have a contract with Seattle PD, not only for Fauntleroy, but we also have it for Coleman Dock. We have a separate contract at Coleman Dock for the construction to have police officers at the 3 intersections that are right in front of our biggest terminal during construction. So with that, task force asked me some questions. We need some numbers on things. One of the questions they asked me are, where are people going? So we took June of last year. They asked for something in fall. So this is the 3rd week of June to the 3rd week of July, the 3rd week of October to the 3rd week of November, the 3rd week of June this year to the 3rd week of July, and the 3rd week of July to the 3rd week of August. Blue is obviously vehicles traveling to Vashon, and the brownish red is folks going to Southworth. Now those are only vehicles. We did not include motorcycles. We did not include walk-ons. These are just vehicles for that 4-week period. It's Monday through Friday was the data that we were using, is Monday through Friday, so we excluded weekends, because that's your guys' commute time. How many commuters do we have here? Actually commute every day. About a third, okay. So that's what we were trying to look at. So what we see last year compared to this year, exactly 1 year later, see a little bit of a decrease in Vashon and a pretty significant increase in Southworth. We look at July, and they both increased. Both numbers increased. We had Greg Beardsley from the FAC here at Vashon, and a couple people that made some public comment asked, can we have numbers for 6 to 9 p.m.? So we provided them from 6 to 9. Vashon, last year, a lot of people traveling from 6 to 9, not so many for Southworth. And that really hasn't changed substantially over the course of those 4 months. We have a pretty good increase for both this last July, but July is obviously one of our busiest months, July and August. We'll be looking at the numbers from the 3rd week of August to the 3rd week of September. Once those numbers are in, we'll be looking at those, because that, again, is another really busy time for us. What are our departures and how do they break down? So if we look at that 3 to 6 time frame, it's pretty evenly split. You've got 3 shared departures from Fauntleroy. You have 2 single destinations to Southworth and 2 single destinations to Vashon. It's pretty evenly split. Anybody tell me which vessels we have the most difficult time filling? Oh, well, it's the 445. We struggle with that one a little bit. Although today, I go down there, I look, it was full. I was on it, it was full. But generally, we struggle with these 2, the 4 o'clock and the 445. Those are the ones we struggle with. And it's all because of timing. How fast the boats are coming in on top of one another, when they arrive, when they depart, if they're late when they got there. We'll go over some of that stuff in a minute. And then from the 6 to 9 hour, it's every boat's going to Vashon, and 3 of them are making it to Southworth. So when I look back at these numbers from 6 to 9, kind of makes sense. Got a whole lot more trips going to Vashon than we do Southworth, so it actually makes sense that there's more people traveling to Vashon during those 3 hours.
Are you able to raise that screen up because we cannot see?
I don't think so. It's sitting on a table was like the best we could do.
There's a big table over there.
So, vehicle ticket redemption. So we wanted to look at ticket redemption, same kind of thing. So these first 6 dates, and I'll have to yell them out to you. So we went all the way back to 2012. Again, it's the 3rd week of June to the 3rd week of July. We picked the same snapshot from every year from 2012 all the way to 2017. What we have here is the 3 to 6 numbers. So 2012, we had 13,800 and some. In 2017, we have 14,600 and some. So not quite 1,000 vehicle increase over the course of 6 years. It's not too terribly bad. 5 years. When we looked at July of this year, about the same. So just a slow, steady increase, not a massive increase, but a slow and steady increase over that time frame. When we look at from 6 to 9, you got almost 10,000 to where we are today with almost 11,000. So over the course of that many years, 5 years or more, we've gone up about 1,000 vehicles from the 6 to 9. So not huge increases. So the average ticket redemption per day, kind of the same numbers. We divided it down by 23 because you have 23 weekdays in a 30-day period. Looking at about 600 per day in 2012 to about 640 today between the hours of 3 and 9. Or 3 and 6, excuse me. And then the hours between 6 and 9, they've gone from about 430 to about 470 a day. Not a huge increase, but it has been steady. Timing, they wanted to know how long does it take to redeem a ticket. On average, again, you just take those numbers, divide it by 180 minutes. How many people do we process per minute? This is the breakdown. 2012, it was about 3.35 per minute. Today, we're doing about 3.57 per minute. Remember, this 3.35 was mostly with scanners. Last year, the 3.58 or 53 was mostly with scanners. We're doing it at the toll booth at a slightly faster rate. Multi-ride utilization. It's another item that was asked for, was multi-ride utilization. How many people are coming through the booth with multi-ride tickets? Actually, what we're seeing is that number is decreasing. Last year it was 6,900. This year it's 6,300. So people that are using multi-rides have decreased during the 3 to 6 time frame. So what conclusions do we have? Vehicle throughput is the same, or maybe slightly better than it was before. Not a huge difference, but the same or slightly better. The terminal constraints do not allow us really the advantage of the vessel capacity. We all know that. We got a 124 vehicle boat that's in the dock, and we have a dock that holds about 90 vehicles. So that means we have all this extra space that we're trying to fill through the toll booth at about 3.5 a minute. Yeah, so there's more orderly flow. We see the dock being filled and the exit lane being filled. When I'm down here watching, when I have staff down here watching, we're showing those lanes being filled prior to the load. Consistently, we're operating now like we do at every other facility.
Folks, I just want to remind you of the ground rules. Let's listen respectfully so that Greg can finish his presentation, and then we'll hear public comment. Thanks.
So we have increased fare collection. We've allowed for a phone ticket redemption system, which I actually watched work today while I was in line. I was behind somebody in line that was actually redeeming a ticket off of their phone. So I saw it in action. And allows us to monitor our employees at the booth. These are the only ticket booths that we don't monitor our employees at. Until now. We have video cameras in every booth we have. Every single redemption is recorded and shown so that we can review that. That happens at every ticket booth throughout our system, except here, because the vehicles just were driving through it to go to redeem from a scanner. Now we can actually monitor just like we do every other toll booth in our system. And the employees were involved from the start to the finish on this. We brought them in, worked with the task force from start to finish. They were absolutely engaged in what they were going to have to do. It wasn't something that was being pushed down from management or anybody else. Lastly, I'm going to get into the bypass lane. So, some of you can or cannot see this, so we'll get into it as best I can. What does the bypass lane look like? Well, we have a lot of stuff going on here. We have a vessel that needs to offload, so we get the vessel offloaded. We load right now through the booth to fill the exit lane. So if I have to have somebody with a bypass lane, what are they doing all day? Waiting for the vessel to offload, waiting for the vessel to load, and then we have two toll booths that are processing people through at about 3.5 per minute as they come through. The other thing that they're doing right now is they're standing right here. They're looking for the medical preference that are coming through the triangle here, motorcycles that come through the triangle, motorcycles that come from both directions, and van pools that predominantly come around this way, but I've seen them come southbound on Fauntleroy Way as well, that are all coming through that same thing. And just so you know, our van pools are way up to what they used to be, way up. So to have traffic that's in this lane, see a bypass, and shoot across a lane that's being filled here and here by a splitter that's out here and there. It's just simply not safe. There's traffic coming from too many directions. I will also tell you that officially the bypass lane went away when we went to the new ticketing system. That was in about 2004. The staff has on occasion done it on their own, but it's never been officially sanctioned since we went to the new ticketing system.
When they use it, the boats are full.
So, why do we leave space on the boats? Let's look at why we leave space on the boats. First of all, we have dwell time. Total time, if everything's running well, we undock, we dock, we load, we do a security sweep, and all that stuff through the toll booth. That takes up all the time. It's on average about 16 minutes to do all that stuff with a full dock at dwell time. If we normally do that, and we fill the dock with 90 vehicles, and we fill the exit lanes, and we get them loaded, if we do our math correctly, we get that done in about 13 minutes, which allows us 2 minutes to get the additional 20-some vehicles onto the boat through the toll booths or in any other fashion. It's not going to happen. So what happens? We leave the boat in because we have to try to fill the boat. We've given them kind of a firm cutoff. They can hold in up to 10 minutes maximum because it starts to affect the schedule in other ways. So if we hold them in for more than that, if we hold them in for 15 minutes to fill the boat, it pushes everything, right? It doesn't just push that one trip. It pushes all of the sailings pretty much for the rest of the evening. And we have another boat that overlays on top of it. Now I've got a situation here at 5 o'clock where I got 2 boats that are going to be in the dock at the same time because I've delayed one of them. Which means I have to delay the other one, which puts that 15 minutes later. And so on and so on. And now add a third boat to that. It does the same thing. So if we do that, we add all this time, then we have to worry about what time do the cruise shifts change? Crew shifts change depending on the boat. One of them will relieve at about 5:15, which is going to put them somewhere between Southworth and Vashon, or Southworth and Fauntleroy. And the other one will be just getting underway, and both of them relieve at Southworth. So it's a problem. Lastly, I'm going to get into is vessel capacity. So how are we doing? These are the boats we have sailing there. We've had over the years, since 2012 all the way to 2017, any different number and combination of vessels that we have. But what is consistent since 2012 is the number of capacity since 14 has increased because we brought you bigger boats. And we're going to be bringing another bigger boat down here when we pull the south and replace it with the KidSat. It'll be yet another larger boat down here. So the capacity right now for a month is about 18,400 spaces. We're only able to get through about 15,600 vehicles in that 3-hour time frame. So that's leaving us what you guys are seeing. Space available on a boat. Consistently. The numbers show it. During a daily utilization, it's about 800 per day, and we're getting about 680 vehicles on there per day. It's just math. Lastly, our daily underutilized space between 3 and 9, if we look at the entire time frame that we were asked to look at from 3 to 9 p.m., still the numbers look relatively the same. We have more capacity than we can actually put vehicles on board. A bypass lane, not going to fix it. More scanners isn't going to fix it. If you actually sit down there during the commute time on a busy day, not in your car but on the street corner and watch, you see the snag is up Fauntleroy Way where the cop is going all the way up to Trenton or Thistle to try to pull cars out from the waiting southward traffic that's in the way. Well, there's not right now because summer's over. But we saw it day after day after day watching the cop go all the way up as far as Thistle to try to pull cars out to fill a boat.
We don't have that cop anymore.
For that, I'm done. I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
I'll be very quick. I know you all want to talk and we want to hear from you, so I'm just going to go through a few of the route characteristics and planning. I'm also not very coordinated, so if I talk into this and click this, then forgive me. So vehicle ridership on this route, for Fauntleroy Vashon in the calendar year of 2016, we carried about 1.1 million cars. That's about 63.6% of the total route. You can see that's about twice as much as the Fauntleroy to Southworth, and Vashon to Southworth was about 109,000 cars. Vehicle traffic changes in the summer from June to August of 2017 compared to the summer of 2016. The Fauntleroy Vashon route sort of stayed flat. There was a down 0.2%, but that's pretty much an even from summer to summer. The Fauntleroy Southworth route really saw kind of a bigger increase. The traffic there was up about 13.4%. So you really felt the effects of that when there were more Southworth cars waiting on the dock, more Southworth bound cars waiting in the line on the street. So it's harder to, pluck all of those Vashon cars out of the line when there are more Southworth cars kind of taking up those spots. So the multi-ride card use is kind of interesting, just because it tells us the multi-ride card users are kind of the more frequent users, the commuters. Those are the people who are kind of using the system more frequently. Fauntleroy Vashon riders are about 70% of those multi-ride card users, and about 41% for Fauntleroy Southworth, and 62% Vashon Southworth. What's interesting is the multi-ride card use sort of drops in the summertime, which says that there are more people buying single fare tickets. So that could be because of more tourists, more recreational users. So that kind of adds to, there are more people who are using the system who are not the regular users of the to the challenge. As Greg mentioned, the KITSAP is going to be replacing the SELF in spring 2019. And we're going to be working with the task force and our ferry advisory committees. Anytime we do any kind of schedule change or process, it's a long process. It starts 18 months ahead of time. We should be starting now. We need to take public input. We'll be working with our task force and ferry advisory committee. We're going to do public outreach about 6 to 12 months ahead of time, and with our transit partners about 6 months ahead of time. And any schedule gets published about 2 months ahead of time. So we have a lot of milestones and a long way to go before we would change any schedule, but we would certainly seek your input on that. So, and upcoming planning efforts, this is related, but more opportunities for public input. Washington State Ferries has recently embarked on a long-range plan. Excuse me. So we recently embarked on a long-range planning effort. We're doing a scoping process that's underway. We're talking about multimodal connections, going door to door, not just dock to dock, and we're going to be really engaging the public in that. And eventually, we're going to be doing a Fauntleroy terminal replacement. It's not a terminal, not funded for a complete terminal replacement, like not funded for expansion, but it's the timber piles, right? The replacement of the timber piles underneath the dock with concrete piles. So we'll be going to you again to talk about that. So I think that's my little two cents.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. So with that, we're going to move on to public comment. We're a little ahead of schedule slightly. I currently have 24 people signed up for public comment. So if we all stick to our 2 minutes, we should have plenty of time to get through everyone who's signed up. I've put the sign-in sheet right here at the end of the table. If you'd like to make comment, feel free to come up and add your name to the list. Before we get started, I just want to remind you of the process. I'm going to call names in the order that you signed up. I'll call the next person and then the 2 following people so you can get ready and know you're coming up. If you could put your hand in the air when I say your name, just so we sort of know where you are and can have the microphone ready, that will help things move along as quickly as possible. Again, we're going to call you in order. I ask you to stick to 2 minutes. I'm going to be a little loose about that at the beginning, but if I feel like people are going over, we might start to keep time a little closer. Clearly state your name. If you want to say which community you're from, if it's not Vashon or any affiliation, feel free to do so. And if you'd like to show support, please do so silently. Raise your hand quietly. You can wave them in the air rather than interrupting your fellow community member or shouting out or clapping. That'll just slow things down and we'll run out of time to take everybody's comment. Also, all comments are being recorded here by Nicola. She's transcribing everything and we'll have that available after the meeting. The task force members and our executives here are listening to your comments, and we're not going to respond to them tonight, but if there are questions, we'll respond after the meeting. They're here to listen, they're here to take your input, and all the comments will also be provided to the rest of the task force that couldn't make it tonight. So with that, I'm going to just start. We're going to have 2 microphones on each side of the room. Justin's going to help me for you folks over there. So we have Todd Pearson, followed by Sheila Moore, and then Dustin Prestridge. So Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello? Can you hear me? Thanks, WSF, for coming. On behalf of the people who will speak tonight, on behalf of the people who will speak tonight, who will undoubtedly say terrible things about Washington State Ferries, please know that they're not meant to be taken individually by you folks, and we're not down on you. But I guess you could say we're down on Washington State Ferries. It has become very clear that Washington State Ferries changed car loading procedures at the Fauntleroy dock in the last year or 2. Before that change was made, the emphasis was on loading the boats as fully as possible. But since that change, staying on schedule has been the priority as ferries leave the dock, no matter if the boat is only partially full. You could say WSF has lost interest in moving cars and people and is now concentrating solely on moving ferries. I'm guessing you guys know that this policy of departing on schedule no matter what hasn't worked out very well for your customers. Those boats leave half full while cars stretch up Fauntleroy Avenue. Wait times are routinely well over an hour. As those boats leave partially loaded day after day, the trust your customers once had in WSF is gone too. These people are angry, but mostly they're astonished and bewildered. They can't for the life of them figure out why you've chosen the most inefficient way imaginable to move them across the water. They wonder why WSF refuses to again allow pre-ticketed cars around the toll booth. There's no evidence that it was unsafe, as WSF claims, in all the years it's been practiced. There is no doubt that single procedure made it possible for many, many years to overcome the problem of an undersized dock and fully load the boats. Reinstate that single procedure and most of our problems would disappear. It is entirely possible WSF doesn't want our problem to disappear. Could they have an ulterior motive for delivering mind-bendingly crappy service? They are under orders from the legislature to operate on schedule, and they are penalized when they don't. Maybe WS finds it to be an impossible mission, an unfair task to run the Triangle route. Maybe they're saying every time they leave Fauntleroy half full, okay, you want us to stay on schedule? We'll show you on schedule. Users of the Triangle route have had terrible customer service because WSF is holding its breath until it turns blue, until it gets its way. What does WSF really want? What is the end game here? They told the task force the next step is to work on the schedule. That's another way of saying cutting service. Service will not improve, and life on Vashon would change drastically if WSF is allowed to get its way and cut runs.
Folks, please just hold your clapping till the end so we can move on. Next up, Sheila Moore, and then Dustin Prestridge, followed by Susan Gress.
Hi, I'm Sheila Moore. I've lived here since 1978, and I appreciate Amy Scarton. I feel like you're trying to do a good job, and I appreciate the work that the task force is doing. And when I look at the data that was presented to us, I don't interpret it the same way it's interpreted by the ferry system. When I see the 6 to 9 lines, I think, well, they're on the 6 to 9 because they couldn't get home earlier. I have a couple wonders before I get to my suggestions. I wonder why the summer surcharge begins before the summer schedule starts. I wonder how many people have been injured by passing the ticket booth. And does the task force feel like they can make any difference? Okay, here are my suggestions. Separate the Southworth and the Vashon lines. Fauntleroy, one of them can line up going towards Target, and the other ones can stay where they are on Fauntleroy. Divide the two lines into two different directions. Use paper tickets or the good-to-go scanner for car and driver only. If the ferries are part of the highway system, then treat it as such. Bridges charge for one car. Toll roads charge for one car. In the meantime, you could reinstate the paper tickets or put a ticket kiosk booth on each ferry so we don't have to stop at the toll booth.
Thank you, Dustin Prestridge, then Susan Gress, and then Jan Stevens.
Dustin Prestridge. Greg, you recently said the new system allows you to ethically monitor the crew, and that now that you know what you know, there's no going back. I'm here tonight to demand that a third party monitor the data that you've provided. We do not trust the data provided by you to support the changes of the loading procedure at Fauntleroy. On one hand, you've given us data on the complexities of the Triangle route and how it's had the fastest growing in the system. Everything from dwell times, boat allocations, dock capacity, and the population growth on the peninsula. With the other hand, you've gone to great lengths to provide data that justifies why Fauntleroy should be treated like every other terminal in the system, with throughput times, ticket redemption rates, to the crew morale. You've pinned this with increased safety of the dock crew, yet you've done nothing to provide any data regarding safety incidents. How can it be the most complex and fastest growing route yet ran like every other terminal in the system? How can we rely on data that is not readily available to the public, does not account for long lines or wait times, and is compiled by you, who is not a data analyst? We need 24/7 data. Data on how many cars were left behind, how many boats sailed with empty spaces, how much this process costs us, and we need this data from an independent third party, and we need this data that we can trust.
Okay, that's Susan Brest, then Jan Stevens, and then Scott Harvey.
Greg explained a very complicated loading system with a lot of people involved and lanes changing all the time. But he didn't talk about what is the real cause of the backup at the toll booth, and that's people having to buy a ticket while you're waiting in line behind them. He didn't talk about us being in line for an hour, finally getting to within 4 or 5 cars of the toll booth and being stuck behind 4 people who have to buy a ticket while you watch the cars load onto the ferry, and finally when you get through, the gate comes down and you're left sitting there waiting for the next ferry. Maybe a bypass lane isn't the way to do it. Maybe that is inefficient. But there are other solutions to allowing pre-ticketed cars to go ahead of people that need to buy a ticket. What if we only sold tickets through one toll booth and the other 2 would be available It's a simple, cheap, and common sense method that at least deserves a trial. But you continue to refuse to do that. Instead, wasted the entire summer experimenting on a trial that seems to prove that adding an extra step made loading faster. I'm sorry, I can't imagine how that worked. There's no excuse for continuing the inefficient and downright dumb policy of having pre-ticketed cars stuck in line behind people who are buying tickets while the dock empties, your boat sails away half empty. Let's fix what's easily fixable.
Next we have Jan Stevens, then Scott Harvey, and then Michelle Harvey.
Good evening. My name is Jan Stevens. I'm on the Ferry Advisory Committee for Vashon, and I've been doing so for about 10 years now. I am concerned. The FAC role with state ferries changed dramatically a little over 18 months ago. The FAC input has since been mostly dismissed, and past plans and agreements that we've had, that we've worked very closely with state ferries on, have been largely abandoned. You'll remember when barcoded tickets were implemented with wireless scanners. The equipment then was not capable of scanning in a timely manner, nor did it properly collect fares. 2 very key requirements, and yet nothing was ever fixed. After a failed implementation of tolling changes in the spring of 2016, we got the Triangle Task Force. Since the task force has been in place, it's pretty clear that Ferries has made out pretty well, and they've improved their internal controls, employee morale is up, and apparently safety is improved. But the customers really haven't gotten anything out of it. The minutes of the last Triangle Task Force meeting failed to reflect the strong position of the participants on continuing to work on operational fixes, and instead the record appears to show a need to move on to working on the schedule. And my concern here is that either Ferries is not listening or there is an alternate agenda. Now, the statement of not going back to previous ways of doing business at the toll booth, it just isn't an option for us. The way it is now is killing us, especially during the summer months. This attitude is ignorant of customer needs and impact. fast lane, playing the safety card does not pass the smell test, even though it was routinely and safely operated for decades. Operation of the two-boat schedule and failing to fully load boats strongly suggests the schedule is not the issue and that a sense of urgency doesn't exist with ferries. I don't have confidence in ferries to make schedule changes without further loss of boat capacity and continued failure to fully load boats. The motives are running contrary to common sense. At present, the Triangle Task Force is hamstrung on achieving anything for the customer due to being steered to focus only on ferries' needs. And I'm just simply not seeing that there is a plan or a vision on a way to make this terminal operate capably. We have already lost capacity in the summer months, and we need to get that back. Thank you.
Michelle Harvey, and then Sarah LeBlanc.
Hi, my name's Scott Harvey, and I've been on the island for about 24 years. And I'm very much in favor of what Greg shared with us about having better employee morale over there. In other words, I feel very, very poorly for the ferry workers that have to deal with the very unhappy people that have been left in the dock because of the system that they do not have control over. I also feel very badly and very much support the idea of auditing and making sure that the ferries collect all their money as much as possible. And most importantly, I know there is a way. I know there's a way, and DOT already has the system in place to get more people through there. And very simply, it's good to go. The technology is already there. The technology is already there. And what can that do, among other things? First thing, it audits everything because you don't have human error there. They're going through, the computers are saying what's scanning through there. If somebody goes through a toll booth and doesn't have a good to go, then just like on any bridge, they're sent a bill to go as far as what's happening involved here. With good to go, then you can reinstate the bypass lane. There's going to be nobody out there collecting anything. It'll be all monitored by the system involved here. So again, they have the system. It's already working on our bridges. It's already working on our highways involved here. And it should work not just for Vashon. It should work for the entire ferry system. Yes. I mean, again, we can be the pilot. We need the things right now involved here. But there's no need for people to be collecting and scanning things or whatever else here. You can have one booth for the people that don't know any better and definitely want to pay for a ticket here, but leave the rest of them open. And you can do that on all your terminals. So it's time to make a difference. You have the technology. You don't have to create anything. Good to go.
So after Michelle, we'll have Sarah LeBlanc, then Sharon Morris.
I'm Michelle Harvey, and I have a couple of comments. Number one, it's often brought up that the Triangle ferry line is difficult. It's different from all the others. And yet, what we have, we want consistency, operating like all other toll facilities in the system. Why? We are not like every other toll facility in the system. This is a ridiculous thing to say. Employee morale improvements? Hey, that's great. What about your customer morale? That's not even on your horizon. And the fact that the Ferries does not send out bulletins in a timely manner like this Labor Day two-boat debacle that was given over to us like 2 days before the holiday. People could have made arrangements to do things differently had that information come across in a timely manner. Ferry alerts come through after the fact, long after the fact, and we have no way other than people who are constantly monitoring for us to get this information to us, because the ferry system won't, or can't, or doesn't care.
Sarah, then Sharon Morris, and then Pam Folk. Spout. Sorry. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Hi, my name is Sarah LeBlanc, and I am a Vashon resident. And I'm curious about the key performance indicators. What are they exactly? Where are they published? When were they last modified? And is there a process to change them? Because one thing we've heard is that on-time performance is measured. But that's the wrong metric. Something is broken when boats are leaving only partially full during rush hour, and the line is stretched 1.5 miles down Fauntleroy Way, and people are waiting 2 and 3 hours to get on a boat. So, if the performance measures aren't telling you that something is broken, then you're measuring the wrong thing. Because at the end of the day, if you aren't moving people, it's just a failure. That's the whole reason you guys exist. So we would also like to know the auto capacity utilized on every trip, not just the daily totals, and the average length of time a vehicle spends in the queue before it's loaded on a departing vessel, because you're not measuring that. So it should be easy, we think, if you have the data, but other people have made this point about the operational commonality, and that is completely nonsense. So if there's no justification for commonality, really, if you look at the data and the challenges at the dock. And so if that's at the expense of creative solutions, then that's just not working, and you need to change that.
So Sharon, you're in the middle, and then Pam, and then it'll be Robert Shull.
My name is Sharon Morris. I've lived on the island for nearly 30 years. I'm going to be quick because all my points have been pretty much made. But I'll just quickly summarize by saying by their measures, the Washington State Ferry new procedures...
Hold the phone, hold it up.
The Washington State Ferry new procedures haven't made things worse for them. And in my nearly 30 years on the island, I have never seen poorer service than we've had this summer. Just some quick questions. If the bypass lane is a safety issue, even though it worked well for many years, what's the proof of that, and what procedures have been discussed to make it safe? If there is lost revenue with the scanners, what's wrong with the scanners? And how much revenue was lost? I haven't heard that either. And then the issue other people have talked about is they did things like monitor employees to make things, to make Vashon and to go, everyone go through this toll booth to make things the same with other terminals, but clearly we're not the same as other terminals. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to have Pam, and then Robert Shull, and then Gary Christopher. And I'll just remind commenters, if you could hold the mic almost right up to your lips, it'll help these folks who are sitting behind the speaker here.
I think we all know that as traffic increases on the triangle has to be broken. We keep trying to fix a monkey that's broken, and it's not going to work. Last time I looked, for me to get off this island, I don't have a preference of whether I want to take a ferry or not. I have to. Southward, that's a choice. You want to go to work that way instead of going to work around Bremerton or down to Tacoma? That's a choice too. Good to go? You need a human element to run a ferry boat. These guys have a really tough job. Good to go is not going to handle it. I've ridden ferries. I've been on Vashon for 40 years. Before that, I lived on Whidbey Island. Before that, I lived on Bainbridge. My sister still lives on Whidbey. I ride the ferries a lot, all of them. Last I heard, a line is a line. When you get in a line, I don't care if you're going to visit your grandma who's sick, or if you're coming home from work, a line is a line, and there should never have been a bypass lane. It created conflict, confusion, unsafe procedures. I would love to see City of Seattle start to handshake with Washington State Ferries to improve safety on Fauntleroy Way for the people who live there. I came home August 13th, trying to get onto the Vashon ferry, came from the Burien side, came up. Fauntleroy was completely blocked. You know why? People got tired of going in and out of cars, in and out of cars. Do you know how unsafe that practice is? City of Seattle needs to handshake with you guys. We're different, all right. We're the only ferry dock that isn't on a Washington State highway. So apparently City of Seattle doesn't want to make that lane for ferry only. And you have to guess, am I behind parked cars at the park? Or am I in a ferry line? And you jump out of your car and you run down to look. You also have lane cutting that happens. You're going to have fisticuffs. You're going to have guns come out soon if you keep this up. If you can't fix the triangle through scheduling, cut southworth off at the knees. Sorry. You can go around, and my dentist is in Paul's Post, so for me, that's an inconvenience. I'll be going to Tacoma and around, but it doesn't make sense. Better signage, better training of employees. I cannot believe how every different mate on that ferry now unloads it differently. Used to be center lane, then those two, then the outside lanes. Every time you stop that flow of traffic, you are decreasing the time, increasing the time it takes to unload and load those ferries. Lastly, you can have a phone app but no video screen for the second booth at Fauntleroy. Shame on you. And I have tried and tried. I've gone as far as Jay Inslee. Last time I checked, if I pull into a Washington State Department of Transportation rest area, I cannot buy alcohol. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why you would sell it on a ferry, which is AKA an extension of the Washington State highways. And who is collecting the revenue for the sales of alcohol on the Washington State ferries? I can't find the answer.
So next we have Robert Scholl, Gary Christopher, and then Regan Sparks.
Thank you very much, Robert Shaw. We have heard a lot of anger here. There are a lot of others who aren't speaking, who are angry also. We've also heard a lot, Greg, about the schedule and how it should operate and why it can't work. We've read on the website numerous times why it can't work with the structure that we have. We have a lot of smart Washington State employees who know how to make it work. We can take a toll at 60 miles an hour. Now, I'm not saying that we need to operate it as quickly as that on our dock, but we can do much better. We spent hundreds and hundreds of millions on high occupancy on-ramps and off-ramps and lanes. And if the problem is about electronic tolling, about having a carpool, that should not be a problem. We should encourage more carpools. We should not have the cars inching down Fauntleroy Way idling with more and more emissions, hurting everybody's health, and hurting operation. So we know how to do it if we will admit what the problem is. It's the toll booths. That is why we cannot load the boats quickly enough. If we can just drive on through, we can do it. And operate much cleaner and more efficiently for everybody. Thank you very much.
Then Regan Sparks, and then Neil Wasteblot.
Hi, I'm Gary Christopherson, and I've lived here a long time. And I want to follow up on ideas that several people have mentioned. And I think that the problem to start with is that we have a different set of problems at Fauntleroy than other ferry docks, and our solution needs to be different. We cannot just try and emulate other docks because we can't get enough cars on the dock to fill the ferry. Our solution is available through DOT's Good to Go system. Good to Go system as applied to our dock would mean installing scanning stations above each lane, a left lane for Vashon, a right lane for Southworth, closing altogether the the ticket booths. And all cars coming onto the dock would stream to the appropriate place on the dock. There, we would still need, at least in my vision, some handheld scanners to collect tickets for passengers. However, I believe, and I couldn't get this data from what's available publicly, but I believe that about 70% on average of the cars that go on the ferries are car and driver only. And I would also suggest that at rush hour, it's even more than that. So if everybody streamed onto the dock and parked, then handheld scanners would have to deal with passenger tickets for either 1 out of every 4 or 5 cars, which when you're trying to stream on and fill the exit lane, should make it much more efficient because everybody streams to the exit lane and the handheld scanners have to deal with every 4th or 5th car. There are several ways to deal with those passengers. One way is, since from the data I have seen, about half the passengers in cars going on the ferry have prepaid tickets, so those tickets could be scanned easily and quickly. Remember, the scanners are only dealing with passengers. All the cars have been scanned through the Good-to-Go system as they drove on the dock. The people who don't have tickets could be dealt with the Good-to-Go system as well. All the ticket taker has to do is indicate how many passengers there are in the car at each time, scan the license plate, and Good-to-Go takes care of it. Now, there's other ways you could handle passengers, but I believe that this system would eliminate the backups we have, would fill the ferries, because you can certainly get more than 3.5 cars through if you've got everybody streaming through onto the dock and just scanning the tickets from the toll booth for passengers. In addition, I think as a clincher, I suspect that this ferry system is paying about $500,000 or more per year to operate those ticket booths. By eliminating those, you can certainly pay to install the scanners, improve service and throughput, and for years in the future save money for the ferry.
Neil Westcott, and then David Goebel.
Hi, I'm Reagan Sparks. I'm about a 38-year resident of Vashon, and I've been commuting through the Southward Vashon Triangle route for the past 25 years. So every weekday, I go through there twice a day. It's not my first rodeo. I've had the chance to observe how that system works for a long time. I expect to wait in a line. I don't have a problem with waiting in line as long as I'm waiting for a boat that's going to be full. I want to have the good faith that the ferry system is moving as many people as possible across the water and not moving an empty boat while I sit on the dock on the other side. I've heard a lot of good ideas here tonight about future solutions, and I hope that those ideas are explored. But the current best coping mechanism, as imperfect as it is the bypass procedure. Up until 2 years ago, that worked very well. Everyone understood it. And I will tell you that what was represented on that screen up there is not the bypass procedure. Maybe that's why there's misunderstanding. Of course, if you swerve from the southward lane across the toll booth lanes and into the exit lane, that would be dangerous. But that's never how it was handled. It was always done from the left-hand lane after the police officer had sorted out the traffic, so that the only people in the left-hand lane were Vashon pre-ticketed people, and the cones were put out to block traffic, and you were waved around only after the dock had initially loaded, all the cars on the dock loaded onto the boat. It was a 15-minute procedure specifically tailored to load the back half of the boat. And you went around with the guidance of the ferry people, with your pre-ticket, and got on the boat, and the boats left full. And as soon as that boat was full, the traffic pattern reverted to the prior station. So there's no swerving around. There's no additional traffic that wasn't there for the past 20 years. It's the same dock. It's the same boat. There's been a lot of effort by the ferry system, I feel, to introduce unnecessary complexity into what is not rocket science. It's, there's a certain amount of logistics involved. The state transportation system is a logistics agency. They have a lot of smart people there. I believe that in a controlled 1-acre dock environment, they could find a way to safely manage a bypass lane for pre-ticketed passengers as a coping method until some other better solution comes online, rather than leave the passengers to wait and miss time with their families and miss medical appointments and miss school meetings and have businesses suffer and have entertainment refuse to come to the island because they have to wait in a 3-hour ferry line every summer from June through August. And then rely on the fact that the ferry lines are going to go away and we're all going to be quiet all winter because it's better, and then restart the whole thing over again. We've been through 2-year cycles of this now, and it's time to make a meaningful improvement this winter so that when we hit next summer, it's not another FUBAR season.
Mia Weisblock, David Goebel, and then Cheryl Richmond.
I want to say, I've been coming to these meetings for more than 2 decades, and I appreciate your courage.
Louder, louder. Put it up there.
In part, the reason for my comment about the courage is I think you and we are being held hostage by the Transportation Committee at the state level. The issues with the boats are in part a reflection of how much they've underfunded and unsupported the ferry system as a whole. And so you have to manage that environment and then come out and just talk to us about what they let you do and don't let you do. And I think a direct reflection of that is your comment earlier about the replacement of the dock. This system as it stands now does not work. They're concerned with the safety. We're concerned with the safety. But why wouldn't you put a second slip or more functionality at Fauntleroy while you're doing that work already? This has been a long-term problem. This is not a new puzzle. This is the exact same issue we've been having for decades. There's been nothing new introduced here in this environment. Only the solution hasn't worked anymore. It is hard to believe what the objective is when I come on the ferry system at 10 o'clock in the morning and see that they've stopped all the cars at the ferry booth, and I have photographs. The entire dock is empty, and there are maybe 15, 20 cars on the ferry. When you talk to the dock representatives, they say, we're not in charge, but the dock is empty, the boat is empty, and it's 10:30 in the morning, and the line is up in the middle of Lincoln Park. It just is unfathomable, and I have photographs to show you. I just can't confirm why they would do that, why they would leave the dock empty, and then they said they were trying to manage to get the boat out on time. If the objective is to move people and not boats, they're missing the window. I think there was a big cultural difference. I rode the PO boat for many decades from the time that it first started. And when the county took over the PO boat, the experience changed completely. It became a functional, easy, welcoming, interactive, well-informed, totally different cultural change. If you've not spoken with them about what they're doing and how they do it, you're missing a great opportunity. Bainbridge is the most profitable, most highly used run in your service, if I'm not mistaken. With all the changes that are going on downtown, with all the shortcomings of Fauntleroy, why weren't we out front with trying to find a way to get a boat that went directly from Vashon into Seattle? I know there's complexities there. I know there's trafficking issues. They are not going away. But this problem has a fundamental flaw, and it has for decades. You should have been out. The ferry service, the transportation committee should have been talking with the city of Seattle to figure out how to get the boats, besides the PO boat, from here to there, so that your load was lower and this problem wasn't worse. Why, in your statistics you were showing us, would you do a cruise ship at 5:15, the busiest part of the day? If you were a commercial company and your technology didn't work, you would fire the company or return the equipment. Why have you not done this with the scanners? It rains. This is like English cars not working in the rain. The notion that you cannot get a scanner to function in our environment means you return it and you ask for your money back or you sue them. You've got lawyers, go get it done. The equipment should work. If you want to monitor the people, they don't need you in a small booth to be monitored. You can monitor them on the deck. They don't have to be monitored in a room to be monitored. If that's the issue, then you need to check your employees, check your technology, or check your solutions. And lastly,
Strobel. I moved here in '98, and I want to associate myself with the remarks about the efficiency of the bypass lane and the way it operated. Nothing made me happier when I got to the front to see one of the toll booths closed, because that means that I'm not going to get stuck behind people fumbling trying to buy a ticket when I already have a ticket and they didn't have the foresight to buy one in advance. The idea is having, if you can imagine a movie theater that had a same ticket, the same line of people who already had bought tickets in advance and needed to just redeem the ticket and get the movie theater. All these doesn't work. That's why they have two lines. One for people to buy tickets, and the other one so they already have a ticket, they can just go in and watch the movie and not miss the first part of it because they're stuck behind people trying to figure out what movie they want to watch. So associate myself with all the parts of potential technological solutions like good to go, and also that we have the wrong measurement key performance indicators. It's obviously not how many people go through the toll booths, how many cars get on a boat. A very simple, one of the things I've been thinking about this is a completely, in a way, orthogonal access to the problem is not just that, but the actual per transaction cost, if you look at it on aggregate, of people that already have tickets in advance is much lower than people having to buy tickets. So what can you do to increase the percent of people that have tickets in advance? And when the ferry is between sailings, you have people sitting in the employees sitting in toll booths doing nothing. They could go and walk up the line and sell tickets to people that are sitting waiting in line that want to buy tickets with only a card and that aren't oversized. So no cash sales, and that's a safety issue. You don't want them dealing with cash. But if they're buying with a card and it's a normal, normal sized car to go and passengers, sell that while people walk up the line and sell it, at least enough to fill up the back of the boat. It's not that many cars, it wouldn't take very long. And then all those people are pre-ticketed and it will move much slower. And that's completely independent of the bypass lane, which we should have anyway. But at least that is something that could be implemented in probably several weeks to get that system in effect. And you would get many more people through, and it would still help even with the bypass lane, but it would certainly make our current mess a little better.
Thank you, Richard. We have Cheryl Richmond, Bill Van Houten, and then Dwight McCabe. Cheryl.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Richmond, and I lived in Fontley Hill for 6 years, and then I moved to the island almost 4 years ago. And I can assure you the last 2 years have sucked. Way worse than they ever were when I was still living in Fontley Hill. I know there's an issue with people who live in that neighborhood. I can't imagine what they go through to sit and watch these cars blocking their driveways, but we're frustrated too. And so what I wanted to do tonight was just make a comment about the human face of what we're experiencing. I work with the Vashon Senior Center. I have had to take patients off the island to medical appointments. We're not waiting an hour, Greg. We're waiting 3 hours. You really need to understand that. It's been like that all summer. And while it is better since Labor Day, I ride that boat every day. My daughter commutes every other week to her dad's house. It's affecting our kids. It's affecting our seniors. More than half of our population is over the age of 55, and almost half of our population lives below the poverty line. You've got to do better for us. I don't care what the system needs to be to get those tickets. This is a highway system for us. We don't have a hospital. We don't have after-hours medical care here. We can't just get on a boat and get to the hospital or get to an appointment without planning 3 hours ahead of time to get to the appointment that we need to get to. And that's just not acceptable. And you keep it raising our fares, but you're not providing better customer service.
Okay, next we have Bill Van Houten. Oh, here. And then Dwight McCabe, and then Jane Slade.
Hi, I'm Bill Van Houten. I've lived on Vashon for the last 3 years. I've been a medical preference driver for the last year and a half, so Greg referred to the medical preference program several times. This is a program where the ferry system gives priority to people who are in chemo, go to and from surgery, their life-threatening diseases, or their terminal. Coming off the island, you couldn't ask for anything better. It's so smooth. Down at Fauntleroy, it's a little bit more confusing, but during the day there's only 4 traffic patterns, and if there's an SPD in the intersection or a splitter on the point, it still makes it easy. Since there are only 4 variations, if you do that for very long, you figure out how to make that work. 3 weeks ago, I don't know what happened, but there's no longer any way to handle medical preference in the evening. You come down to the dock, and all they can say is get in line. One person offered me, well, you could cut in front of everybody right at the toll booth. I don't want to get the shit kicked out of me and have to fight with somebody after hours. So I said, okay, I understand that. Can you please tell me at least what time the schedule changes from the day process to the night process? I understand the day process really well. The night process is a little bit more complicated. Fortunately, the lines aren't very long. Nobody on the dock or in the booth was able to tell me what time you change from date processing to night processing. The other suggestion I just have for you folks, most of the people that drive in medical preference, they have the paperwork in the car, but they don't have anything external that helps the people on the dock or in the street identify you as a medical preference driver. I made my own sign. This cost me a whole 5 cents to make. Between this and my hazard lights when I come down Fauntleroy, if there's somebody at the intersection, they pick me up right away. They know exactly what they need to do. I don't have to stop until I'm at the booth getting scanned. None of that works after hours. So I'm really frustrated with what do I do when I'm bringing somebody home from chemo and say it's 8 o'clock. And as I come down Fauntleroy Avenue, I can't tell. Are we running on day rules or night rules? Are you honoring this or not? If I need to just get in line, okay, I understand that if there's a way to expedite it, that's fine. But there's no information anywhere on that, and nobody on the dock is going to be able to tell me that either. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And to that point, I've noticed that these folks are taking notes, and we can get you some information about medical priority vote. I'll make sure Nicola writes your name. Okay, you guys okay with that? Next we have Dwight McCabe, Jane Slade, and then Christine de Guzman.
Hi, I'm Dan Peter. I've been doing that for 8 years. And I can tell you from my experience that things were really different this summer. I went with a 2-boat schedule. I just moved this summer compared to before. I use data a lot in my business, and I think you're blurring averages from 3 to 6 with actual boats, at least from what I'm seeing here. Maybe you're looking more quickly. I have never seen boats sailing half empty. I mean half empty. I don't mean there's a slight aisle with room. I mean half empty. When the line is further back than I've ever seen before. Now, you've got an issue in general, which is you've got old boats. The legislature's not funding them, so they break a lot. And you got old boats, and the legislature's not funding them, so they break a lot. We should be retiring, and we don't have enough backups. So our route ends up getting stuck because other boats can move. I get that. And you've got increasing population, especially southward. And by the way, I think the numbers we're seeing here show your capacity, which is flat, not the growth in demand, which is longer up the hill. I've got a suggestion. I agree with lots of the suggestions, but one thing is you need to have a bigger dock.
Yeah.
And so when you're redoing the dock, you got to have a bigger dock with 2 slips. That's expensive, and it's probably a huge political thing to get the money and to get Seattle to agree. I get that. I've got a suggestion, which is build the extension of the dock right now on land. So this is crazy, but take over the lower Fauntleroy parking lot, build a new parking lot for them slightly farther up the hill, and then make your dock start at that parking lot. You've got the extra capacity, and you can have the toll booths there, you can do automatic stuff there, and then have somebody sending people down to the dock in the mix that you need for the next load. That's automatically expanded from 90 cars to the 124 you're going to need, or more. I get the fact that if you've got 2 lanes full of southward, it's a Vashon over the boat. You've got 45 spaces or something. So you're really in trouble. So that's my suggestion.
Okay, next, Jane Slade.
Hi, more of same. In June of 1985, my mother called to let me know that because of the long line at the ferry, she would miss my high school graduation. As long as there have been ferries, there have been ferry lines. They're a drag, but nobody blames you for that. Today, we have more resources for ferries, bigger boats, more advanced technology, more experience. And with this more, you do less. After decades, all of a sudden it's unsafe to allow ticketed riders to go around the booth. After spending big bucks on electronic ticketing, the scanners don't work. I really appreciated those free rides though. I agree, it was weird to get 14 rides out of a 10-ride ticket. And those bigger ferries that we paid for run half empty. It is not unreasonable to expect for you to do more with more. Please look at customer-facing data. Please do something about the wild unpredictability. When you have a flight, I'm okay knowing that I have to go for the ferry before the ferry I really need to take. I get that, I do that, I adjust. That's life on the island, and that's absolutely what we do. But when you have no idea how to predict, when I'm looking at people lined up behind parked cars up by the gas station when there's a massive break, they have no idea. When this talk about making things consistent across ferry lines, when the signage in Fauntleroy is practically nil, I have no idea how tourists handle this run. No idea. We do expect more. I do appreciate that ferry workers' hand signs are becoming more consistent, and I'm less likely to get screamed at. Seriously, that was a problem in days before, so I'm happy that they're happier. I'm happier with that, and I appreciate riding the ferries with them. So thanks.
Thank you. So next we have Christine Vashon, then Hillary Emmer, and then Theo Eicher.
I'm Christine de Guzman. The photos of half-empty boats while a line extends up to the 76th station is beyond incredulous. The only reason for that, according to Washington State Ferry, is the boat must leave on time. Some things I've thought about besides the bypass lane, which has been nixed. Can you load walk-ons only at the end? Can there be 2 people in the south booth? So they could take tickets on this side and they can take tickets on the exit lane. So that would be 3 booths worth of ticket takers. If the ferry is late already, as it was during the 2-boat schedule this last September, why is it so important to leave half empty? I mean, why not just fill the boats? The period when we're having the most problems with the boats leaving half empty, you say, well, we need to be on time, and I understand your problem with the boats being on top of each other, but I also feel like it will eventually smooth out. Like, there's catch-up, so you can catch back up that 15 minutes that it's late, then it's going to be, maybe 10 minutes late, and then it's going to be 5 minutes late the later you go. So you're not really making that much of it's not that much of an issue to stay and be a little bit late and fill the boat as you make it sound. The last thing is the reason for stopping in the toll booth may be acceptable at all the other ferry terminals, but that's where there's long areas where they can wait, and we don't have that. We're not like all the other ferry terminals, so you really need to look at other ways of getting us through.
Okay, so next is Hillary Emmer, then Theo Eicher, and then Scott Hitchcock.
Hi, I'm Hillary Emmer. When, at our meeting that you talked about when Lynn was here, one of the reasons she got rid of the bypass lane was because she decided that first come, first serve is the way to go. And that really was the motivation. And it never had to do with safety. And she said it out loud. So, we never had an accident and we need it back again. I totally agree with most of the people what they said about the scanner should work. Now when you go through the booth, they give me a receipt. How long does that take? Don't give me a receipt, just scan it and let me get moving so the person behind me can go. And then on Vashon, let's talk about Vashon for a minute. We lost a lane. We used to have 2 lanes. But now we only have 1 lane going to Fauntleroy because the high school imports 275 people and we have 4 buses. So, those buses are only there in the morning run and once in the evening run. Give us the 2 lanes, we can load the boat faster, we can get to Fauntleroy faster, and Fauntleroy can come back. And then we only need the 1 lane for safety for those kids twice a day. Another thing is, you're not giving us capacity versus in Southworth. On Sunday, I was heading to a funeral. I went on the 2 boats ahead so I can make the funeral. And boat pulled in, I moved about 4 spaces. You loaded the boat with Southworth. We're supposed to get, I believe, 2/3 of that boat. We got like 4 pieces. The next boat came in, I moved quite a bit down, but I didn't make the ferry. I missed the funeral, which is my personal problem. But the problem is, we're not getting the fair share of capacity from Southworth. Also, this is more to my people here. I have all these complaint forms that I have that I'd be more than happy to hand out. Not only should you give this to the ferry, but you should make copies of it, send it to our representatives, send it to the head of the Ferry Commission, and send it to the governor. Because this is not working for us at all. And I totally agree. I also have an orca card, I'm over 65, and I should be able to use that on the ferry also as a car and driver and everything else, and it should never run out. And you can also put up kiosks all up and down Fauntleroy. And therefore, people can buy their tickets when they're online if it's well signed. Now, I will admit that people who don't buy tickets ahead that actually live here, the reason is because it's expensive and we have so many low-income people. Coming up with $145 at one time is almost impossible. So the poor pay more. And we are encouraging the poor to pay more. And it's ridiculous. We are residents here. We should be able to, all of us, buy a card and put money on it. My orca card just reloads automatically. And therefore, it would work for low-income people as well. And we shouldn't penalize people.
And Scott Hitchcock, and then Thane Gill.
Yeah, I'm not Theo, I'm Jar Lyons, but I'm taking his spot. I've been taking the ferry for about 10 years. I grew up in Chicago, so I can be a little blunt. The data that we got here in the beginning of the meeting was very illustrative. And what jumped out to me was we have a commission here, or representatives here, who are suggesting that part of the problem is the ferry terminal at Fauntleroy. We all know that. And that if we could possibly get up to 4 cars a minute in those booths, we're almost there. We'll have it solved. That tells me you're completely missing the boat here, so to speak. So the other thing that's interesting about the triangle route is we have very different physical terminals. If we could expand the space at Fauntleroy, if we could triple the size, it would behave very similar to Southworth. If we could stream cars off of Fauntleroy onto the dock, it would behave very much like Vashon. Which brings me to the dirty little secret, and that is the revenue that you're forced to collect with bodies at Fauntleroy that you don't have to collect at Vashon and you only collect for cars at Southworth, costs more than you actually collect. And I think that should be illegal. Now, if you're not willing to expand the dock at Fauntleroy, don't punish us, don't tax us by collecting fares you don't need. And for God's sakes, don't leave us sitting on the street when the boat's half empty. You can't do that. So, this all goes back to the good-to-go solution that was mentioned several times tonight. I'm sure you're going to go back and say, well, you can't do that because you have to collect for passengers. I don't think you've shown you can actually collect more money than it costs you to collect. If that is the case, we should not be collecting for passengers. If you don't collect for passengers, you will not have a problem filling the boats. So, I dare you, next July 4th, I dare you, I will put up $1,000 for you to let every car stream onto the boat next July 4th and let every passenger walk on fare free. And I guarantee you will not leave with a partially empty boat.
Dane Gill and then John Cornelison.
I'm Scott Hitchcock. I've lived on the island full-time for 12 years, had property here for 27, family's been here for 60, so pretty experienced with the boats. One thing I want to challenge is the ridership statistics. You say the ridership is up, which may be true over the whole system, but if you go to your website and pull your stats off, the peak ridership year for Vashon Run was in 2004. We're down 6% from that time. Peak ridership for Southworth was in 2006, and we're down from that time as well. So ridership is actually down, and the service is worse. That's not acceptable. So it's not your ridership, it's the changes you've made over the years. You got to get the boats unloaded first. So everybody remembers, you used to be able to exit going southbound on Fauntleroy by going through the parking lot. You can't do that anymore. Slows that right-hand lane down, exiting. We now have a bus stop that clogs it up too, so you can't turn right. Slows that right lane down even further. You can't exit the cars off the boat, you can't start loading the boat. So you need to fix that first. What else has changed? We used to have paper tickets that used to be collected down at the boat end of the dock versus the toll booth. When you're doing the hand scan at the toll booth, the scanners are standing right at the end of the toll booth. So if someone needed to buy a ticket, they had to wait until the car before was scanned before they could get to the booth to start that process. If you would have moved those scanners down the dock as the dock cleared, you would have gotten more people through the toll booth because the people that had to buy could have started the process earlier. I can go to Starbucks and buy a cup of coffee, pay, and get out in about 15 seconds. Why does it take so long to buy a ticket at a toll booth? That whole procedure needs to be fixed. If your technology is not right, get the right technology. Because something's going on there. Maybe an incentive to fix the problem is no fare increases until boats leave full. In fact, we start calling fares back every year if we're not fixing the problem. So you get to the point where there's a financial incentive to fix the problem. Right now, there's no financial incentive for you to fix the problem. I still get on the boat, pay my fare, even if it's 2 hours late. So it doesn't cost you anything for me to be 2 hours late. It costs me something. It should start costing the ferry system to run. The whole bypass lane, we still use it. We use it for carpools, van pools, and medical people. So the whole safety argument is a bunch of crap. You know? Exiting the dock, why don't we put a stoplight there instead of a police officer? Because all the police officers are different. And we can have a timing light, figure out what the best, most efficient way to clear the dock of offloading boats or offloading cars is. And start the timing system when the boat gets to the dock, get the most cars off the dock as quickly as we can so we can start loading the boat as quickly as we can. So there's lots of changes that have happened over the past years, from collecting down at the ferry end of the dock versus now collecting tickets at the toll booth end, changes to the offloading, and all of these have been a cumulative negative when the ridership has actually gone down over the past 15 years. So, Ryan.
Thank you. Let's bring Mayor and John Cornelison, and that will wrap up our comment period.
Hi, my name is Thane Gill. I've been an Island resident for a while. I'll be sweet and to the point. The metric that you guys are using to measure the ferry system is wrong. It needs to be moving bodies from Vashon to Fauntleroy, from Fauntleroy to Vashon, and the south respectively. The fact that the mission statement that the Washington State Ferries need to have is to move those bodies. Sorry, I'm getting a little tired here. If the ferry's leaving on time, that's good for your crew, but it isn't for us. It's a ferry for people. People live on Vashon and Southworth. I think lanes, tolls, and other changes are just implementation details. The Washington State Ferries mission should be to move people with minimal time. Thank you.
Hi, John Cornelison. I've been here about 15 years, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight. I know it's not an easy situation, and I'd especially like to thank all the volunteers now and over the years past for having done a lot. I'm also with Vashon Be Prepared. A lot of people have been talking tonight about how to get more people through the booze. I accept that and agree with that. My concern is a little more, let's make sure we have a big enough dock. I feel like we're the poor child over here. We've got the most frequent number of ferry departures apparently in the system. And it seems like waiting until 2024, which is the dock renovation, which needs to happen for seismic reasons. The Seattle fault would cause a 25-foot tsunami, not just a single wave, but a huge pressure wave. And so I love what you've done to our North End dock. I don't think you've received enough credit for that. That's huge. We didn't have to lobby for it. But we also need the Fauntleroy dock to be big enough, especially if we have more larger boats coming in the future, and our ridership may or may not be up whenever someone figures out the data. A couple of things just to increase flow through the booze. Consider putting signage up Fauntleroy Way saying lanes open for Vashon commuters, lanes open for Southworth. Something signage could maybe help with that instead of running people up and down. And the other thing is to decrease the number of traffic or cars. This is a tough one. Put a park and ride lot that is good for overnight on the Fauntleroy side, because you have a lot of visitors who could leave their car, but they have to drive on because there's no easy parking within a mile or two. So that's another thing. And then just the only final point is Vashon is unique in that we rely on the ferry system. That's why the North End ferry dock improvement was so essential. And if the Fauntleroy dock isn't there, sure, boats could go up to Coleman or somewhere else perhaps, but that's not going to work after a disaster. We really need a good quality dock at Fauntleroy.
Thank you. So that concludes our public comment period. If you didn't get a chance to speak tonight, or if you think of comments later, please email them to us. We're always collecting comment. There is no deadline for comments. We'll take your input at any time. With that, Amy's going to close us out.
Yep, and I'll be quick. I just wanted to say primarily thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts and your ideas. I'm excited about what I've heard. I think we've heard a lot of good ideas, a lot of new things. We've heard a range of ideas. There are some quick things that we can look at. Some of the ideas are a little longer term. There are some low-cost ideas. Some of the ideas are going to take a little more money, but the variety of ideas, we will catalog them. We will respond back out to you. We will get the task force to continue to work through these,
And we will commit to continue to be a partner with you and to listen and to follow up on a lot of these great ideas. So thank you for coming.